Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. With me, we have Dean Fiotto from DraftKings, and today we'll be going through From DraftKings to DraftKings, how Finalize and Analyze can help you win at contracting. For today, the webinar will be recorded, so we'll be sending out the recording following when we wrap up today. But if there are any questions, especially as we get through the conversation with Dean a little bit later in the end, or that are product related, please put them in the chat. We'll do our best to get through everything today, but we will follow up or have your customer success manager follow up if we don't have time. In the host today, my name is Tim Bryan. I'm a customer experience manager on the voice of customer team here at LinkSquares, was formerly a customer success manager for about 2 years here as well. And we also have Dean Fiotto, the associate corporate counsel at DraftKings. And Dean, just want to pass it over to you for a second, let you introduce yourself a little bit further.
Sure. Thanks, Tim, and thank you, LinkSquares, for the invite. So as Tim mentioned, I work at DraftKings on the commercial transactions legal team. I've been in this role since February of 2020, and before that, I was on the same team as an intern during law school.
Perfect. Yeah, really full cycle there already with DraftKings, so love to hear that. And just to set a quick agenda today, we want to go through LinkSquares Finalize in a more holistic sense, providing an overview of the platform, talk through the interplay and the magic between LinkSquares Finalize and Analyze, and finally get into a quick demo of both aspects of the platform as well. And wrap things up with a fireside chat with Dean, going through his experience at DraftKings and with LinkSquares, and then turn things over to the Q&A portion. But why use a pre-signature tool? When operating as a CSM, I really often heard about just the issues with contracting, particularly when they don't use a pre-signature tool. Their workflows did not allow for a defined scalable process in getting contracts created, redlined, approved, and executed. They were basically operating in a ton of different silos in convoluted workflows, switching between multiple tools, juggling multiple contracts, taking forever to find the right contract at the right time, and really led to a high-risk scenario or multiple high-risk scenarios in turning around contracts quickly, efficiently, and accurately. And there were a lot of instances where people would go through email, send the wrong version would get approved, leading to plenty of headaches down the road as well. And that's what LinkSquares Finalize is looking to solve here. So Finalize, for anyone that may not be familiar, is our contract creation solution that seamlessly integrates with LinkSquares Sign, one of our new products, and Analyze for a full end-to-end contract lifecycle management. The goal of Finalize and the outcomes that our customers are seeing are the abilities to draft better contracts faster, improving cross-team collaboration and organizing those conversations as well, automating the tasks to get time back in your day, and getting out of your inbox, really keeping all of your contract information on the pre-signature side in one centralized place within Finalize, and finally being able to use metrics in our dashboard to understand your contract processes, your workflows, and getting data-driven in terms of being process-driven and being able to make prescriptive changes rather than looking backwards and not having enough data to be able to really centralize your experience. With LinkSquares Finalize and Analyze, some of the main values and main outcomes that you will be able to see are AI-driven standardization within Finalize. So using the same smart values that exist within the Analyze tool and running those across your agreements in the pre-signature side to mitigate risk, quickly be able to redline and understand new contracts as they come in. It also provides a centralized source of truth. So LinkSquares Finalize and Analyze are the one-stop shop for all agreements. Completed agreements from Finalize that automatically flow into Analyze, creating more streamlined processes there, and having one centralized platform to understand everything to do with your agreements themselves. Powerful reporting. With the data going seamlessly from Finalize into Analyze, you can actually start leveraging some of your pre-signature risk questions or pre-signature information within Analyze to view those across the scope of your executed agreements as well. And then no more switching between multiple tools, increasing collaboration and productivity, not having to go through email, go through Jira, go through other sources, and keeping everything within the LinkSquares ecosystem. And let's actually dive into Finalize itself and walk through the connectivity with Analyze as well. So Finalize, for anyone that may not be familiar, this is the main agreements page of Finalize. What this will show is any agreement that is in flight, or if I go to inactive, any agreement that's been completed and been fully executed. And we can view all of these at the same time as well. One word of caution, this is demo account, so we do that we work with data in here. So it may not be as robust as some customer accounts that we work with. But we are able to go in and quickly search by the agreement name to pull up individual agreements. Or we can start filtering to individual authors if need be. So I can look at one sales rep's performance over time, look at the agreement status, immediately understanding where in the workflows are these agreements and how do I use this to prioritize my day. I could look at anything under counterparty review, for example, looking at anything that the counterparty has sent back to LinkSquares and that we are in charge of reviewing their edits, their red lines, their comments. And finally, for progress, I can look into how many tasks have been completed for this agreement. Have we gone through the approval processes? Is there anything outstanding that we need to work with our team to finish up before we can execute? And speaking of workflows, we have the ability to set up different types of workflows than Finalize. So we can do a sales agreement here. This is a contract on our paper that we're able to draft. We can do intake forms, so third-party paper that we need to submit for review, or set up request forms as well, where you can have our teams request legal draft a contract on their behalf. And for the sales agreement, and just to give you a quick overview of what a workflow looks like, we're able to set up agreement questions to start. These are contextual questions, making sure that anyone in charge of reviewing this agreement from legal, from finance, from any team, has an immediate understanding of the parameters of this agreement. So no more having to go through Slack, through Microsoft Teams, through email to gather this information after the fact. And one thing I do want to point out right here is we see a little shape. I'm not sure what that is, but this indicates that there is conditional logic for approvals. So depending on the answer the drafter would select, this individual would be added to the approval process automatically just to increase the efficiency of this process. And we can also see that this is mapped over to business owner. That is a leading statement. I'll be showing that in Finalize in a few minutes here, but we can carry this information over as well for that downstream reporting. And just quickly on the tokens, these are in essence mail merge fields. So any of that standard information that goes into your drafted agreements time and time again, we set up these tokens so whoever drafts these agreements can only fill in the term, the counterparty contact name, so on and so forth. So they're not able to get creative in the sense where they are doing their own agreements, maybe increasing the risk if this were to get executed. We can standardize and control what they're able to draft. And we can also set up standard approval tasks for any agreement just to make sure the right approvers are approving at the right time and combining that with the conditional approvals as well. From a drafter's perspective, all they have to do is go into new agreement and navigate to the template that they would want to use. We look at the sales agreement here, we have to fill in the agreement detail fields. This is closed. And there we are. And now we get to the drafting portion, and we can immediately see what information can go into the agreement. What's the term? 12 months. Give myself a little promotion. And finally, we'll just get a quick view into what we filled in today to make sure that this is accurate and see if we have to go back and edit or save and finish. And ultimately, we'll be brought to this page. This is the individual agreements landing page of Finalize. But to save you time and to better explain what is going on here, I'm quickly going to navigate back, and we can filter to an already existing agreement that is ready for review and approval. So I can filter by the counterparty review. And let's look at our friend Ask Jeeves here. And very similar looking page, but we have more information. So one thing that I want to point out right off the bat is that we're able to look into every version of this agreement as it comes in, looking at what was done internally versus externally with counterparty review, internal review, and see when these edits happened to make sure we're always operating off of the most up-to-date version of this agreement. Within the activity, this is my single source of truth in relation to activity or comments in the agreement itself. We can see when users are taking actions and even chat back and forth with our colleagues to give them up-to-date information at any point in time. Within the tasks, we can see what tasks are outstanding, what needs to be complete, and then who owns these tasks as well. And last but not least, in the info, just getting a sense of what was filled out during the drafting portion to make sure that we always have this readily available should we need to review down the line. And for this agreement right here, we can do a couple quick things before we approve. I'm going to run the summary, but we can also run an automated document comparison, which will show us exactly what has changed from the initial draft to this version to make sure that we are able to approve. Just going to download that. When I view the summary here, looks very reminiscent to what we see in Finalize, a little bit of a different UI, but I can immediately see where these smart values are, do our review, and make sure that we're still comfortable to move forward in this agreement. And for the document comparison here, we can see what was filled in by the drafter. I left these highlighted in yellow. The system does not do that automatically, but I can go in and see any changes. So it looks like I went in and made some formatting changes. And we can also see that our counterparty here has added in another blurb and client warranty. So we can flag this automatically whether track changes was on or off and make sure that we are amenable to this change. In this case, it doesn't look too bad. 17 business hours is a reasonable SLA. I can go ahead and approve this agreement. And then be able to send this out for signature. In this right here, this is LinkSquares sign, so we can go ahead and quickly add our recipients and make sure we can get this out for execution. And while that is loading, another area I wanted to go through was the Finalize dashboard. What this is going to show are data-driven metrics around the performance of your agreements. So starting very quickly up top, looking at how many agreements have been created and when this has been happening, any leading or lagging trends within this creation period as well. Where our agreements are sitting today, what status are our agreements currently in, how long these agreements have been in that status, and how many times these agreements have been updated within the statuses themselves. In breaking this out to the template level, looking at how long our individual templates are taking to get from inception all the way to full execution to see if there's any areas for streamlining. And then going back to this agreement, we can see it's been fully signed. So our counterparty was able to go in, hopefully as fast as your counterparties are, and execute in this document. In this right here, we can see the agreement has been linked. And I can navigate immediately over into Finalize to this agreement. Right now, it's just going through the AI very quickly. But I can view this in Finalize as well at a future date to make sure that we always know where this agreement is and can track the full context from start to finish. And going back into Finalize here, what we're able to do, I mentioned the business owner. So this is a field that was initiated within Finalize itself. I can at any point in time go ahead and start reporting on the business owner or any other Finalize information. And then if need be, we can filter to anything that Joe owns. Maybe Joe is on vacation and we need visibility into every agreement that is in his name to make sure we get other teammates involved. Go to the business owner. And then we can start adding additional smart values from here to figure out the severity and the triaging process in his absence. Very high level overview there on Finalize, but wanted to show how the two systems are interacting and how both are being able to be leveraged very easily within the same workflows. But Dean, I think I've been talking for quite a while. I'm sure everyone is sick of my voice on this call. So let's pass it over to you for a second here. Wanted to give you a chance just to let the audience know a little bit more about DraftKings to start. Tell me a little bit about the company itself.
Sure, thanks, Tim. So DraftKings started as a DFS, daily fantasy sports operator, and basically DraftKings does and would offer contests to customers in which customers can choose pro athletes that they think would score the most points in a given game, whether it's an NFL game, NBA, MLB, etc. So that was the foundation of DraftKings, and it has since expanded into sports betting, online casino offerings, and even NFT and gamified NFT spaces. Along with that is the encompassing of different things like people and customers and events and things along those lines, marketing and all that good stuff. At the heart, though, I think DraftKings is still a tech company. And I mentioned all these different kind of characteristics because I think it speaks to the volume, but also the diversity of contracts that my team sees.
And you mentioned diversity of contracts, especially within your team. Tell us a little bit about how you operate as the associate corporate counsel within DraftKings. What type of contracts are you focusing on?
Sure. So I focus on all sorts of different contracts, which is kind of, I think any in-house counsel will tell you is a fun part about being in-house. I think primarily I see a lot of marketing and event agreements. I sort of manage the intake of those two teams, but the contracts that I get to work on run the gambit from pro sports teams and leagues to dense, complex software as service agreements. So again, the volume and the diversity is large, and I get to work on these contracts from inception with the business all the way through review and negotiation, and eventually, hopefully, to execution.
Yeah, it sounds like there's never a dull moment just with that variance. That's amazing. So hopefully it's the good kind of busy throughout the day there. But you mentioned, the inception of contracts all the way to execution. How does that currently work for DraftKings? Tell me a little bit about the contracting process overall.
Sure. So as it stands now, with our recent implementation of the Finalize tool, the business, the stakeholder, whoever is submitting the contract request, can upload it to the Finalize platform. At that point, the managing attorney might delegate it to another attorney on the team, and at that point, that attorney is off and running. Generally speaking, if let's say I'm the one that has been handed the pen in that particular ticket, I can go into the Finalize ticket page that we just saw you doing a lot more than I know how to do in, and I can communicate directly with the business stakeholder, the contract request submitter. So I can exchange drafts with them and pick their brain on different things about the arrangement and unique characteristics about the deal itself. Also, the kind of threshold questions that you were looking at, those play a huge role in just the setting up the foundation of drafting, right? So if I can have the business, if I can hold them to the standard of submitting with their contract requests, counterparty names, contract term lengths, jurisdictions that are in play, the different verticals at DraftKings that are in play, whether we've contracted with this entity before, all that stuff. If I can have them lay out that threshold information for me, it really reduces the back and forth. So all that to say that I can do all that through the Finalize tool, and that's where the submission leads to us, the attorneys actually dealing with it.
Yeah, and it sounds like it really just eliminates the variance on a lot of things, right? But knowing what you're working on at any point in time, no more having to hunt and peck for these agreements, going into eliminating any non-standard intake type of questions from your team and having to chase down the right answers after the draft and then waste time doing so as well. I appreciate the overview there, and I think that really lays the groundwork for the fireside chat overall, going into your specific experience with DraftKings and Finalize and Analyze for that matter. But overall, I know that you joined DraftKings after DraftKings bought Analyze as one of our first customers, but why did you end up choosing Finalize over other pre-signature tools out there? What was that evaluation process like for you guys?
Sure. So it's true that I was onboarded after Analyze was, but I think we chose Finalize for the same reasons we chose Analyze. I think generally speaking, we needed a tool like this because of growth, not only in the spaces that DraftKings was operating in, as I alluded to earlier, but also just physical growth. We have a few thousand employees in several different countries at this point, and that kind of growth is just laden with the risk of different employees signing a myriad of contracts without legal review. At least that's where my head goes first. So we knew we needed something, an intake system that was going to be well received by the business. We know we needed something that was going to present the lowest hurdle, because any sort of change, any sort of new implementation in any given process is going to be met with some skepticism. Why are you asking me to do an additional thing at work? I'm trying to get everything I need to get done. So there needs to be that recognition between, okay, we need this new process, but also we need to implement it smoothly. And so we knew Finalize was a good choice in that regard because we had been working with Analyze for so long. We saw Finalize as kind of an easy add-on with the tool that we already had, which, as I mentioned, would kind of lower the training burden, lower the complications in its reception. And along those lines, we had some meetings with LinkSquares before we implemented Finalize, and in the few that I attended, I can remember that LinkSquares was, as per usual, just super receptive to the kind of questions that we had and the suggestions that we had, and the desires of DraftKings and the business needs of DraftKings when it came to what we needed in the pre-signature contract intake tool. And it's always great to support local tech.
Yeah, it's great to hear, and I've been living in Boston for quite some time now. It's been amazing to watch just the journey that DraftKings has had. Scaled incredibly quickly and incredibly well, but with that scale comes change management, of course. So just the ease of use and Finalize and get people on board quickly and making it pretty dummy-proof, for lack of a better term, in terms of having them use the templates, fill in the information that you need, and ultimately help turn around and keep your internal stakeholders happy and up to date as well. And with Finalize itself, kind of after rolling out, after getting up and running, what were some of the immediate benefits that the team saw in relation to using Finalize and Analyze?
Sure. So as I mentioned, there's, with any new implementation, there's going to be that process of onboarding everyone, and that process is going well, but it's still happening. So in terms of immediate benefits, I think we were more ready and more capable to hold the business accountable, to make sure that contracts weren't being signed without legal oversight, without legal review. I think when you're talking about managing a business that's in so many different spaces, or managing the contracts of a business that are in so many spaces, the biggest concern is people entering into contracts without stringent legal review, and that's where we come in. And I think that's where Finalize immediately helped us in that. We were able to keep tabs on all the different deals, and as you showed us earlier, we were able to keep tabs not only on the deals themselves, but on the progress of each individual deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the progress itself is fantastic. So you can not only see progress in terms of how things are getting approved, but the progress in how your sales members or members of the team are performing from a metrics perspective. Are there any indicators that we can flag to maybe help streamline their deal velocity, or have some tough conversations and changing their workflows or behavior to benefit the organization as a whole and benefit their position at DraftKings as well? In terms of having Analyze and Finalize at DraftKings, I know we've been touching on this a few times, but what value do you see in addition to kind of ease of use across Analyze and Finalize, the familiarity with LinkSquares as a whole? What value do you see in having the contracting and kind of full lifecycle contract management take place within the same integrated platform?
I think saving time is always a huge thing, an important thing when it comes to contracts and legal review. I think any good legal team that's worth its salary is going to be criticized as taking a long time, because that's the unfortunate that's the catch-22 of having a legal team, right? But I think wherever we can save time, we try to do, and this is one of those examples. Having both of our contract management platforms, one where we store, organize, file, research, and analyze, having that on the same platform as the one where we intake, communicate, review, draft, negotiate, and finalize, having those two platforms on the same website, on the same app, it's just, it saves time, even just down to the, reducing the amount of times that I or my coworkers have to do two-factor authentication. If I can trim those down a little bit, then we're saving time. But I think ultimately that's the biggest thing. It goes from onboarding the platform and training everyone up, as we talked about, to the business becoming fluent in the tool itself. And I think that's a big thing with just user interface, right? When someone is familiar with a user interface, it's going to save time across the board. And so that's why having our two contract kind of brother and sister tools here on the same platform was a no-brainer.
I love the way you just phrased that as the siblings. I've never heard it that way, but I'm going to steal that from you if you don't mind. And yeah, I think the huge part is making sure that misconception that legal is a cost center, making sure that can get turned around based off of your efforts then finalized and based off the metrics and value that the internal stakeholders can see. It's invaluable from a perception standpoint. And then we do have a couple questions in the chat itself. I'll get to those in a second. Just want to share the screen quickly again. And Dean, thank you so much for just your insights here. It's been phenomenal just to get the chance to hear more about life at DraftKings and how you're using the tools today. But one thing I did want to highlight, because I know we're approaching time in a few minutes, is that as a gesture of our appreciation for attending the webinar today, we are offering discounts on products and upgrades. So just contact your CSM to learn more in terms of what that would look like, but wanted to highlight this before we ran out of time. And then we do have a couple questions in the chat as well. So want to just pick a few of those and go through. And Dean, if you don't mind, I'm going to tag you in on a few of these because they're more in your realm working at DraftKings than mine. But starting off, for DraftKings, what percentage or what kind of rough estimate of contracts are you working on that are on your drafted paper or versus third-party paper? Are you able to share that at all, or?
No, yeah. I mean, I can't get into too much specifics there, but it's an interesting question. I think as a legal team, you always want to work off of your own paper. So in an ideal world, it'd be 100% DraftKings, but that's not always possible, especially when you want to do business with big, powerful, companies because they have a lot of sway. And when you're the company coming to another company and saying, hey, let's do a deal, they have that kind of leverage. Like, all right, you want to do a deal? Well, here's our contract. Take a look. So if I had to put a number to it, I'd probably say that somewhere between 65 and 75% of the contracts that we do start on DraftKings paper. Whether by the time we cross the finish line it still resembles that is a different story. But again, we try to get as many contracts started on our paper as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's always the goal, right, of having 100% on your paper, but there's always the Googles of the world who will just never say yes. Always makes it a fun negotiation regardless, though. Another one from the chat here is, who uses Finalize at DraftKings? Are there certain teams involved in the organization that use it more prevalently? And the individual who asked the question mentioned that they're thinking of using AEs and partner managers use the tool, but most contracts are third party. So wondering if your experience at DraftKings could help guide what that would look like for this individual.
Okay, I think I see where we're going with these questions. Yeah, so essentially, what we saw, Tim, you doing was basically like a template, filling out a templatized version. I think what the chat is wondering is like, what if I don't have a template here? What if we're working off the other side's paper? And I think that's extremely common in our Finalize world. I think the business often just uploads the third-party contract, and they're like, hey, DraftKings, could you please review this? Hey, DraftKings legal, could you please review this? So So Finalize is also great in that regard. The people that are using it at DraftKings is, I think, my manager said it best when, he's not going to make one of the founders, he's not going to tell one of the founders to go on Finalize and upload his contract request. But generally speaking, we have everyone at DraftKings. If they're coming to the commercial transactions team with a contract request, then they have to upload it to LinkSquares. We had recently another legal team at DraftKings request a contract, and they were told the same thing. Please upload this to LinkSquares. So we try to get everyone, but in terms of like if it's someone that's kind of high up enough to be a little detached from the day-to-day processes at their own company, or if it's a 5-alarm fire contract, we might take a look while it's also simultaneously being uploaded. But in my experience, uploading, and I'm not just saying this to give props to LinkSquares, but the uploading process is super quick. I've tried to buy myself some time with contracts before and say, hey, before I can take a look at this, please upload it to LinkSquares. And then unfortunately, 5 minutes later, I'm getting pinged about it on LinkSquares. So yeah, we try to get as many people at the company as we can. And pretty much everyone who has a contract request has to go through LinkSquares right now.
That makes sense. Yeah, I agree with that. People who have enough power can usually bend those rules, right? But third-party paper in LinkSquares, I think it's incredibly valuable, especially going through the AI summary, which I had shown a little bit earlier, being able to immediately understand what is in this agreement from the third party. Is there anything that falls outside of our acceptable risk parameters, or are we able to quickly determine that, hey, we actually don't need to redline this based off the AI. We can proceed forward and really streamline the ability to get whatever this agreement is executed as efficiently as possible. I think we have one more question that came in here. Let me just pick that one out. So right now, the question itself, there's no process for taking contract requests or keeping track of where contracts are in their life cycle at my company. How should I go about even creating a process to start tracking this, whether I use LinkSquares or not?
How to go about creating the process? I think the biggest thing, the first thing you can do is identify the risks that are presented in not having this uniform process, right? The first one that comes to mind that I've touched on a couple times is contracts being signed inadvertently. So I think once you can identify some risks, you can then bring that to the business or whichever team you want to onboard, and you can say, hey, here's the purpose behind what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to solve for these risks. And you can explain them, and you can try to make them seem as scary as you want. And then once everyone's on board, then you can discuss exactly how the process is going to work, right? You can explain to them, generally speaking, what a contract intake system looks like. It's pretty helpful to kind of visualize it, right? You're funneling all the contracts into a more narrow intake system, so that the legal team, which is generally smaller in relative to the other teams in the company, can appropriately organize and handle the high volume of contract requests. So that would be how I would go about starting the process.
Makes a lot of sense there, and I honestly love the fear factor approach, making it the risks as scary as you need them to be within a realistic sense to get that process up and running and to justify the need for that process to even occur. But I think we are up against time at the moment. Any questions that we did not have a chance to address, we'll follow up either from myself or your customer success manager via email. But Dean, can't thank you enough for taking the time to have this conversation, to walk through, analyze, and finalize in life at DraftKings. Really appreciate just the willingness to be a part of the conversation here.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate the invite, and thanks everyone for the questions.
Perfect. Well, appreciate it, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.